A grocery clerk saved a baby in the parking lot. Didn't know the father's watching from his limousine. The drizzle had begun just after sunrise, misting the parking lot of the bustling supermarket. Cars moved in and out, tires hissing on the damp asphalt. Sharon, 24 and already tired from her morning shift, was wrangling a long line of metal shopping carts. Her red uniform jacket clung to her shoulders, soaked in patches. Her hands cold from gripping the wet metal handles. She bent to pick up a discarded soda can near the cart corral when something, a flicker of movement just beyond the carts, caught her attention. A toddler, barely 2 years old. Wandering, small feet splashing through shallow puddles, headed straight toward a reversing pickup truck. Sharon's breath caught in her chest. "Hey! Stop!" she shouted, throwing down the can and lunging forward. The truck continued to reverse, its taillights glowing red. The driver was clearly unaware of the child behind him. Sharon sprinted, water splashing under her shoes, her heart in her throat. She reached the little girl just as the truck loomed inches away, scooping the child into her arms and twisting out of the vehicle's path. The truck screeched to a halt. The carts she had abandoned veered off slightly, one crashing into the side of the truck and leaving a long scratch on the paint. The driver, a middle-aged man in a windbreaker, jumped out, his face red with fury. "Are you insane?" he shouted. "Look what you did to my truck!" Sharon, holding the trembling little girl tightly against her chest, turned on him. "You almost killed a baby." "Yeah, well now you owe me for the damage." Sharon's eyes flared. "If a scratch matters more to you than a child's life, maybe you shouldn't be driving." The man opened his mouth to argue, but just then Logan Rourke arrived. Tall, impeccably dressed, his dark coat catching the rain. His phone call forgotten, he froze as he saw his daughter, Julie, clinging to a stranger's shoulder, her plush rabbit dangling from one hand. "Julie," he gasped, rushing over. Sharon turned to face him as he reached out, and for the first time their eyes met. She hesitated only a moment before gently handing the girl to him. She ran into the lot. A truck was backing up. "I didn't think, I just moved." Logan held Julie close, checking her over, kissing her damp hair. "Thank you," he said breathlessly. "I thank you." But Sharon, still shaking, wasn't softened. "Watch her better. Next time there might not be anyone around to save her." The pickup driver tried again. "Are we just ignoring the damage?" Sharon didn't even look at him. "Your truck can be fixed." "Her bones can't." She gave Logan one last glance, then turned and walked briskly back toward the store. Rain streaked her cheeks as she disappeared through the automatic doors. Logan stood there, stunned, his daughter safe in his arms, the drizzle thickening around them. He looked after Sharon, her soaked uniform, her steady voice still ringing in his ears. He didn't know her name, but she had just saved everything that mattered, and he hadn't even said enough. The next morning, Logan Rourke sat in the back of his car, a thick envelope in hand, his brow furrowed deeper than it had in months. He had made countless quick decisions in his life, yet nothing had shaken him like a grocery clerk's words. He replayed the moment in the parking lot, her shout, the flash of red, the way she shielded Julie, and then how she had looked at him, not like a man of power or wealth, just a father who had failed to act in time. By 9 a.m., he had her name, Sharon Whitaker, 24, shared rental on the edge of town. Works at Palmer's Market, no known relatives in state, no debts, no social media, just a name, and an imprint in his mind he could not shake. Logan stood outside Palmer's Market, sharply dressed, the envelope tucked inside his coat. Heads turned as he walked through the store, whispers trailing behind him, but he had eyes only for her. Down aisle 2, restocking cans with quiet precision, he approached and cleared his throat. "Sharon Whitaker." She turned, mildly surprised. "Yes?" He pulled out the envelope. "I wanted to thank you properly for saving my daughter." She looked at it, then at him. "What's this?" "A token of appreciation," he said. "Please." Sharon opened it slightly, saw the thick stack of bills, and froze, her face hardened. "I didn't save your daughter for a reward," she said, voice steady. "I did it because she was about to die." "I know," Logan replied. "But this is—" "No," she cut in, handing it back. "I don't want it." He blinked. "You do not even know how much it is." "I don't care." They stood in silence. Sharon calmly set down a box. People assume everything has a price, but what I did wasn't for sale. Logan's jaw tightened. I didn't mean to offend you. You didn't, she said. You just reminded me how rare it is to do the right thing for no reason. Behind them, a customer wheeled past. Sharon didn't budge. She resumed stacking cans, unaffected, while Logan stood frozen, envelope in hand, unsure of himself for the first time in years. You have a beautiful daughter, Sharon said quietly, not facing him. She deserves someone who sees her, not just shields her with wealth. Logan nodded slowly. I saw her. I didn't expect that someone else would care more in that moment, she asked. He winced, but said nothing. She glanced at him once more, then walked away toward the back of the store. No dramatics, no apology, just the steady squeak of her shoes on the linoleum. And Logan Rourke, millionaire, policymaker, father, stood alone with the envelope still in hand, and the dawning realization that he had just been taught a lesson he never saw coming. It was not the money she refused, it was the belief behind it, that kindness had to be earned, that decency required a price. She had risked her safety for his child and walked away without asking for anything in return. For the first time in a long time, Logan felt small, not because he had less, but because he had never realized how much he lacked. And perhaps that moment, standing alone in a supermarket aisle, was the beginning of something he had not expected to find. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon. The sky was a pale blue, streaked with soft clouds, and the city park near Logan's townhouse buzzed with the gentle chaos of children's laughter. Logan sat on a bench beneath a large elm tree, legs crossed, phone in hand, but his eyes, for once, were not on the screen. Julie, his 2-year-old daughter, was nibbling on a biscuit beside him, her curls bouncing as she hummed to herself. "Daddy?" she suddenly chirped, pointing excitedly. "The nice lady." Logan followed her finger, his heart skipping a beat. Across the park, by the jungle gym, stood Sharon. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, her name tag from the grocery store still clipped to her shirt. She was kneeling next to a group of kids, patiently showing one of them how to untangle a kite string. Julie was already halfway across the grass before Logan could react. He got up and followed, his steps quickening as his daughter ran straight into Sharon's arms. "Hey there!" Sharon laughed, surprised but pleased. She scooped Julie up easily. "Well, aren't you just a pocket full of sunshine?" Julie giggled. "You saved me." Sharon's smile faded a little, touched with memory. "I guess I did." Logan cleared his throat gently as he approached. Sharon looked up, her smile settling into something more neutral. "Hi," he said, awkward but sincere. "Do you mind if I sit for a moment?" Sharon nodded, motioning to the patch of grass nearby. Logan lowered himself down, watching Julie now seated beside the other kids, busy with crayons and paper. "I did not expect to see you again," Sharon said, brushing a leaf from her jeans. "I asked around," Logan admitted. "I wanted to thank you. Again. Properly." "You already tried," she said, not unkindly. "With money?" he said, giving a dry chuckle. "Which clearly did not land the way I thought it would." Sharon shrugged. "I am not for sale. That is all." "I know," Logan replied. "That is what stopped me." There was a pause. The laughter of children floated around them like wind chimes. "I have spent most of my adult life surrounded by people who do things for a price," Logan continued, his voice quieter. "Assistants, donors, contractors, even friends. Everything has a value, a transaction." "Sounds lonely," Sharon said. "It is," Logan admitted. "But I did not really notice until someone like you stepped in." Sharon looked at him then, really looked. For the first time, the tailored suit and politician's composure seemed to crack just slightly. "I pulled a child out of danger," she said. "Not for applause, not for favors, because it was the right thing to do. Anyone would have, but not everyone did," Logan replied. He watched her as she returned her gaze to Julie, who was proudly showing her drawing to another little girl. "You didn't ask for recognition. You didn't want compensation. That's not how most people in my world operate. Maybe you need to leave that world more often," she said. He laughed softly. "Maybe I do." For a while they sat in silence. The breeze lifted Sharon's hair. Logan noticed how at ease she seemed here, barefoot in the grass, laughing with children who weren't hers, content without spectacle or status. He realized then how foreign kindness without agenda was to him, and how much he admired it. "I know this might sound strange," he said, "but I would really like to talk again sometime, maybe without the envelopes or awkward gratitude." Sharon raised an eyebrow. "No speeches?" "No speeches," he promised. "Then maybe," she said with a smile, "I'll think about it." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the playground in amber light, Julie ran back toward her father, crayon smudges on her cheeks, and a picture clutched in her tiny hands. "Look, Daddy," she shouted, "I drew you and me and the lady." Logan took the picture. 3 stick figures stood beneath a wobbly sun. The tallest one wore a suit. The middle one had big curls. The last one, with long hair and a bright smile, stood between them. "She put us together," Logan murmured. Julie nodded. "Because she is nice." Logan looked at Sharon. "Yes," he said, "she is." And for the first time in a long time, he smiled. Not the kind reserved for cameras or donors, a real one. The kind that says, "I am thankful in a way I cannot explain. And maybe I want to know what else I've been missing." The late afternoon sun filtered through the store's dusty front windows, casting long amber rays across the worn tile floor. Sharon tugged at a heavy cardboard box, her shoulders straining as she tried to slide it into the storage aisle behind the dairy section. Her shirt clung to her back, sweat from hours of shelf-stocking and organizing mixing with the frustration of a long day. She huffed, leaning over to shift the weight again, but the box did not budge. "Need a hand?" The voice came from behind her, calm, low, and unmistakably out of place in a supermarket. Sharon turned, startled. Logan Rourke, in dark slacks and a button-up rolled at the sleeves, stood at the end of the aisle. He looked completely out of context, like a senator had wandered into the wrong movie. But his hands were bare, his tie gone, and his eyes, those calculating, press-hardened eyes, looked almost human. She blinked. "What are you doing here?" He gave a half-smile. "Thought I'd stop by. You mentioned once your stock shipments come Mondays." Sharon folded her arms, wary. "You came to help with boxes?" "Well," he said, walking toward her and kneeling by the stack, "I figured the least I could do is offer 2 hands that are good for something other than shaking." Before she could object, Logan was already lifting the box she had struggled with earlier. He grunted slightly, more from surprise than strain, and carefully placed it on the nearby dolly. Sharon stared. "You just lifted it," he said, dusting off his hands. "It is not quantum physics," she snorted, despite herself. "Bet your campaign donors never see you doing that." "They would probably die of shock," Logan admitted. Over the next hour he stayed, not as a guest, not as a politician playing humble. He fetched crates, broke down cardboard, and even cleaned the scuffed freezer door without being asked. Customers walked by in quiet disbelief. Some whispered. One older man whispered, "Is that Rourke?" Sharon just rolled her eyes and kept stacking cans. At one point, Logan paused by the wall near the checkout counter. His hand brushed over a faint smudge, an old chocolate stain Sharon had never quite been able to scrub out. Julie had dropped her snack there the day she slipped and fell. "She cried for exactly 12 seconds, Sharon said from behind him, noticing his focus. Then got up and asked if she could have another cookie. Logan gave a soft chuckle. "Sounds like her." He wiped the stain gently with a damp cloth from his pocket, then stood straight and turned to Sharon. "Thank you," he said, "for that day, and every little thing you have done since." Sharon opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no words for the quiet sincerity in his tone. That night, after locking the store and walking the cracked sidewalk back to her small apartment, Sharon found herself thinking about Logan more than she expected. Not the Logan from the news clips or the campaign flyers, not the man in tailored suits and sound bites, but the man who stayed late to tape up a broken box, the one who crouched down to clean a smudge because it mattered to his daughter, the man who had, maybe for the first time, let someone see past the polished exterior and into something uncertain and raw beneath. As she turned the key in her door, the memory replayed, not of him lifting boxes, but of the way he had looked at her when she laughed, not amused or patronizing, just listening. She poured herself tea, sat on her old second-hand couch and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Logan Rourke was not just a man with power. He was a father who had nearly lost his child, a man who carried guilt behind sharp suits and prepared answers. And maybe, just maybe, someone still learning how to be whole again, and for the first time Sharon allowed herself a small, quiet thought she had not dared before. What if someone like that could learn to feel something real, even if he did not know it yet? Logan Rourke had always believed in data, in profiles, numbers, clean lines, and predictable outcomes. That was how he rose through politics, by knowing more, faster, deeper than anyone else. So when he could not stop thinking about a grocery clerk who turned down his envelope of thanks, he did what he knew best. He asked for a background report. What came back surprised him more than he liked to admit. Sharon Lane, 24, former education major at Monroe State University, dropped out in her second year after her mother was diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's. No record of criminal activity, worked part-time jobs since she was 17, currently employed full-time at Benson's Market, supported her younger brother through community college. There was no glamour, no secrets, just quiet resilience. A life built not with shortcuts, but with long nights and longer hours. Logan read the report 3 times. Then one Thursday afternoon, as he wrapped up a hospital visit to an elderly supporter recovering from surgery, something made him pause in the lobby. A familiar shape, slumped, tired, caught his attention. Sharon, still in her green supermarket uniform, her hair tied back in a messy braid, sitting in one of the plastic chairs outside the neurology ward. Her arms were folded across her chest, her head tipped slightly forward, as if sleep had stolen her mid-thought. A paper bag rested on her lap. Her shoes were worn. Her face, even in rest, looked strained. Logan stood still for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then instinct, or maybe something gentler, nudged him forward. He walked to the nearby vending machine, fed in a few bills, and selected a paper cup of hospital coffee. It was lukewarm and bitter, but it was something. He walked back and stopped in front of her. Sharon blinked up at him, clearly disoriented. "I figured," he said quietly. "If you're going to wait around here, you might want something terrible to drink." He offered the cup. She stared at it, then back at him. Her eyes, normally guarded, softened with something like gratitude. She accepted the cup and took a slow sip. "Still better than what I brew at home," she murmured. They sat in silence for a moment. Logan did not ask questions. He did not need answers right now. Sharon finally spoke. "My mom's in there," she said, nodding toward the neurology wing. "She has good days and bad. Today's in between." Logan nodded. "She taught literature before she got sick," Sharon continued, her voice distant. "Used to read poetry in the mornings while making toast. Now she barely remembers half the alphabet some days. I'm sorry." Sharon looked at him, her lips twitching into a tired smile. "Everyone's sorry, but thank you for not saying it like it fixes anything." He did not answer, just sipped his own coffee. After a moment, she looked down at her hands. "I did not mean to snap at you the other day," she said. "At the store, with the envelope, she sighed. "People always assume kindness has a price tag." Logan studied her face, illuminated under the hospital's harsh fluorescent lighting. "I used to think that," he said, "that everything was a transaction, that people did good to get something." "And now?" she asked softly. He looked away. "Now, I think, some people just keep showing up, even when no one claps, even when no one sees." Sharon smiled again, not wide, but real. It was the first time she had smiled at him that way. Logan stood. "Do you need a ride?" She shook her head. "Thanks, but I've got the bus schedule memorized." He hesitated, then nodded. "Take care of your mom." "You too," she said, then added, "With Julie, I mean." As he walked away, Logan glanced back. Sharon was watching him, not with suspicion or wariness, but with calm acceptance. It unsettled him in the best way. That night, Logan sat on his balcony, the city lights blinking below, and thought not about policy or polling data, but about a girl with tired shoes and a steady hand. She did not save his daughter for attention. She did not care for her mother for praise. She showed up, day after day, and maybe, just maybe, this was what goodness really looked like. Not a headline, not a gesture, but a quiet, steady persistence. A kind of love that had no audience and needed none. The meeting room at City Hall was unusually quiet that afternoon. No aides, no press. Just Logan and Sharon sitting across from each other, papers spread between them. The sunlight poured in through the tall windows, warming the long oak table where policy decisions were usually made with more calculation than conviction. But today, Logan's voice held none of that polished edge. "I want to start something," he said. "Something that outlives press releases and photo ops." Sharon leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You're a politician. That's your language, photo ops." Logan did not flinch. "I want to build a program, real resources, for kids who grow up like you, like I almost did. No silver spoons, just promise and too many closed doors." Sharon raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" "Because you opened my eyes," he said. "Because I've seen more heart in the way you stock shelves and hold your mother's hand than I've seen in entire rooms full of people with 10 degrees and 0 empathy." She looked at the file in front of her. "What's it called?" "The Lightkeepers," he said. "A place where children get more than grades, where they learn to cook, read with confidence, fix a bicycle, build a shelter, speak with courage." Sharon tapped her fingers slowly. "And you want me to design it?" "I want you to build it with me," Logan replied. "Not as a mascot, as a partner." She blinked, genuinely taken aback. Then a pause. "I've been let down by a lot of people," she said finally, "especially people in suits who make promises." Logan nodded. "I have too. That's why I'm not promising results. I'm promising work." Sharon stared at him, trying to read what lay behind the calm blue eyes and the expensive watch. She saw weariness. She saw sincerity. She saw something surprising. Hope, maybe. Not the kind shouted from podiums, but the kind built with hands that had learned to carry more than votes. "I don't want my name used," she said. "Understood. I don't want cameras at the ribbon cutting. There won't be one. And if I do this, it's not because I trust you yet, it's because I trust what it could mean for the kids." Logan smiled. "Fair enough." She exhaled, slowly. "Then, let's call it a beginning." They shook hands. Weeks later, in a renovated wing of a local library, the first branch of the Lightkeepers quietly opened its doors. No reporters. Just donated books, second-hand chairs, and walls hand-painted by volunteers from the neighborhood. Sharon stood at the front, introducing herself not as the co-director, but as someone who believes you're worth the effort. Logan stood in the back, watching her speak. Watching the way kids' eyes lit up when she asked about their favorite stories. Watching her kneel beside a girl too shy to read aloud and whisper, "You've got this." It was not glamorous, it was not headline-worthy, but it was real, and real, Logan had learned, was rare and sacred. Later that day, as they packed up leftover supplies and straightened chairs, Sharon turned to him. "You still haven't told me why you're really doing this," she said. Logan leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. "Because my daughter's alive, because someone cared more about people than property." Sharon's expression softened. "And because I need to prove to myself," he added, "that I can be more than what I was trained to be." She smiled, just a little. "Then stop trying to prove, just be." Logan laughed quietly. "You always this wise?" She shrugged. "No, just this tired." He nodded. "Well, we've got work to do." "Yes," she agreed, "and this time we're doing it on our terms." They left the room side by side, stepping into the glow of the early evening. No cameras, no clapping, just the quiet steps of two people choosing to do something that mattered, not because it would look good, but because it would last. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of the worn-down community center in the West Side district, casting warm beams over rows of tiny desks. Children sat cross-legged on colorful mats, listening as Sharon led a lesson on building terrariums. Next to her, little Julie knelt, holding a tiny jar filled with pebbles and moss, her smile wide and uncontained. Logan watched from the back of the room, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, not in judgment, but in peace. It had become a familiar sight. Sharon surrounded by children, her hands always in motion, passing supplies, patting a shoulder, pointing at possibilities. And Julie, no longer just his daughter, but somehow theirs, belonging to this patchwork family that had formed out of something unexpected. After class, Sharon wiped the dirt from her hands and sat on the bench outside the center. Julie climbed onto her lap, playfully adjusting Sharon's ponytail. Logan joined them a moment later, offering cold bottled water. Sharon took it, nodding her thanks. "She loves you," he said simply. Sharon smiled, brushing Julie's hair from her forehead. "I love her too." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the laughter of the children still lingering inside. A breeze carried the scent of grass and summer. Logan finally broke the silence. "I used to think I was doing well," he said, "had everything under control, my schedule, my career, my narrative." Sharon turned to him, one brow raised. "But it wasn't living," he admitted. "It was just maintenance, ticking boxes, earning applause." He looked down at his hands. "I thought I was surviving, but maybe I was just hiding." Sharon's voice was soft. "When did that change?" He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "The day you yelled at me in the parking lot." That made her laugh, loud and unexpected. Logan grinned. "And then again, every time Julie laughs. You know what that sound did to me? The first time I heard it after the accident?" Sharon shook her head. "It cracked something open, like someone turned the lights back on inside." Julie, now playing with her stuffed bear beside them, tugged on Logan's sleeve. "Daddy, can Sharon come home with us today?" He paused, glancing at Sharon. She smiled but looked away, unsure of how to respond. "We'll see," Logan said, gently stroking Julie's hair. "But you'll see her again tomorrow, okay?" Julie nodded and returned to her toy. They spent more and more days like this, at schools, libraries, church basements turned classrooms. Sharon teaching with the passion of someone who never got to finish her own degree. Logan organizing logistics, building donor relationships. But more than that, listening. Listening to voices he once might have overlooked, learning to let go of being the one who always knew best. And Julie was the beating heart of it all. She ran into each space like it was home, bringing her father and Sharon closer just by being herself. When Logan could not speak the right words, Julie would reach for Sharon's hand. When Sharon doubted herself, Julie would curl up in her lap as if to remind her, "You matter." One evening, after a class in the East Ridge housing development, Sharon found Logan sitting on the hood of his car, staring at the skyline lit in pink and orange. She walked over, handed him a warm muffin from the bake sale earlier that day. He took it, surprised. "You bake now?" She shrugged. A volunteer grandmother insisted, said I needed to learn or I'd never be a complete woman. He chuckled, taking a bite. "You're complete, with or without muffins." She looked at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "That a compliment from the great Logan Rourke?" He nodded. "A real one. No cameras, no speechwriters." She sat beside him. "You've changed." He looked down at the street, where Julie was skipping with a few local kids. "No, I think I just stopped pretending." Sharon folded her arms. "What were you pretending?" "That I did not need anyone," he said. "That my daughter would be okay with a father who only showed up in suits and schedules. That being useful meant being distant." She said nothing, but her eyes were soft. "I live now," he said, "because of her, and because of you." She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. "You live now," she whispered, "because Julie laughed, and because this time you heard her." He closed his eyes, breathing in the quiet truth of her words. It was never about a program, never just about charity or checklists or repair. It was about a man, a little girl, and a stranger who became their mirror, reflecting back not just what they were, but what they still could be. And somewhere along the journey, Logan realized he had not just been saved by the woman who pulled his daughter from danger. He had been saved by the woman who taught him how to feel again. The sun spilled golden light over the community park, where colorful banners fluttered above handmade booths, and the smell of grilled corn and cinnamon pastries danced on the breeze. Children darted between tables, laughter ringing like music under the open sky. It was the first anniversary of the Lightkeeper initiative, a community program that, in just 1 year, had touched hundreds of lives. In the heart of the celebration stood a small wooden stage, modestly decorated with daisies and photos of the year's events. Kids with painted faces, families holding books, volunteers hammering fences and teaching sewing. At the center of it all was one constant, Sharon. She stood now near the edge of the crowd, wearing a soft blue sundress, her hair pulled back in a braid. Julie clung to her hand, wearing matching ribbons. Sharon had no idea what Logan had planned. He had simply told her, "Come, it's your day too." The microphone crackled as Logan stepped onto the stage, dressed not in a suit, but in jeans and a rolled-up button-down, more father than politician today. The crowd quieted as he looked out over the sea of faces. He cleared his throat, uncharacteristically unsure. "Exactly 1 year ago," he began, "someone pulled my daughter out of the path of a moving truck. She did not know who I was. She did not care about what I did for a living or how much money I had or what anyone watching would think." His voice faltered for just a moment before he found his rhythm again. "She simply acted, because it was the right thing to do." He scanned the crowd, eyes locking onto Sharon. "That same person refused my money, refused publicity, refused even a thank you at the time, not out of pride, but because to her, doing good was just normal." Sharon shifted, her cheeks pinkening, but Julie squeezed her hand proudly. "I had built my life believing everything has a price," Logan continued, "that people are moved by incentives, not instinct, but that day shattered that belief. Because someone chose to help, not for gain, not for recognition, just because a child needed help." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Logan took a breath, steady now. "That person saved my daughter, but they also saved me. They reminded me what it means to be human, what it means to care without calculation, to act without agenda." His gaze never left Sharon. "Thank you," he said, and his voice carried across the crowd, softer now. "Thank you for not walking past, for not assuming someone else would step in, for not waiting for someone more qualified or more rewarded." A pause. "Thank you for teaching me that kindness needs no currency, that love, in its purest form, asks nothing in return." Tears welled in Sharon's eyes, but she held them back. Logan stepped down from the stage and made his way through the crowd toward her. The people parted, quietly watching. He stopped in front of her. "You did not save Julie because it was your job," he said, voice low. "You saved her because it was right. And what was right brought me back to life." Julie looked up at Sharon, then at her father, beaming. And in that quiet, before the music resumed and the festival laughter returned, Sharon reached out her hand, not in thanks, not in obligation, but simply to hold his. No words were needed, because sometimes the greatest truths are felt, not said. And in that moment, Logan knew this was not about a speech or a program or even redemption. This was about love that arrived uninvited, undemanding, and stayed anyway. Love that changed everything. Thank you for joining us on this journey, one that reminds us how the smallest act of courage can save a life, and how quiet kindness can change a soul. Sharon did not wear a cape, but she became a hero, not by choice but by instinct. And in doing so, she reminded a powerful man what truly matters. Not wealth, not influence, but the courage to do what is right, even when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the goodness still alive in this world, we invite you to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Every week we bring you tales that heal, uplift, and prove that love, pure, unconditional love, still exists. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that make us believe in each other again. Subscribe now. Let your heart be stirred. Let your soul be healed.